Hi, Formula One fans. It's Martha, and I want to welcome you to episode 5 of Cruising 41. We're going to talk all about Japanese Grand Prix, which took place over the weekend. And wow, we are witnessing history in one Andrea Kimi Antonelli. He is the youngest championship leader in Formula One ever. So he continues to write history. He continues to build momentum. He continues to streak into the record books. And not only, and he's been having a very strong momentum. And also he is cementing himself as a real contender for this championship. So bravo, Kimi. And I think we're all pretty happy with how things are unfolding for him. And, some of the things that, he's accomplished as far as last race in China, he became the youngest ever pole sitter. He is the first Italian winner in 20 years after Giancarlo Fisichella won in Malaysia. And he is the second youngest race winner. But again, more importantly, he is now the youngest championship leader in F1 history. He's only 19 years old, and he is already putting himself into a strong position to contend for this championship. And not only that, he is doing that in a very commanding way. So good for him, good for him. So let's talk a little bit about quali. So Mercedes, again, very strong in quali. Andrea, or Kimi, I like to call him Andrea, but Kimi Antonelli set the fastest time, so he put his Mercedes on pole. Right behind him, George Russell. And George Russell was like 0.3 of a second behind Kimi. So, and now when you start thinking about quali, and I know it's only three races in, but if you think about quali now, we're talking about Kimi out qualifying George, with the latest qualifying result. I read over the weekend, someone had posted something to say that the last time a car with the number 12 took pole position in Japan, it was our beloved Ayrton Senna da Silva in 1988. So Kimi has number 12, and Senna was in the McLaren with the number 12 at that time. So behind Kimi and George, we had Oscar Piastri with a strong quali. He was very, very close in his quali time to George, with less than 1/10 of a second of a difference. I think that's what it was, thereabouts. They were very close, very, very close. And behind them, we had Leclerc, Norris, and Hamilton. So you had Mercedes 1, 2, and then McLaren, Ferrari. So it was great to see McLaren kind of like back into, into the grid, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But since they have that DNS, both a double DNS in China, so a big shocker was that Max was out in Q2, and it was in the very last minute of qualifying, and he was knocked from advancing to Q3 by no other than Arvid Lindblad. So that was a little bit of a shocker, but it was good for Arvid. So when it comes to the race on Sunday, it was like 2 in the morning or 1 in the morning for me. So, but regardless, it was Sunday. So both Kimi and George had a really bad start at the beginning of the race, but Kimi had the worst of the start. So he lost several positions, And, Piastri took advantage of that, and he was in the lead. We had Max doing Max things, and he gained positions. He started 11, and around lap 7, he was already in 8th position. So at about lap 8, we started seeing some brief lead exchange between George and Oscar, but Oscar remained in the front, and he was in the lead from George. Lando, McLaren was trying to see if they could attempt the undercut with Lando. So they pitted Lando on lap 16, I think it was. Leclerc then followed, because obviously, so you have one of the contenders, because it was like all of them were kind of like close together. So Lando pitted, and then Leclerc tried to, follow, just to try to make sure that he was not going to be undercut by Lando. And then Piastri, who was still in the lead, he also stopped. And then George stopped, while Kimi and Lewis, they stayed out. So it was kind of like a very reactionary domino effect, if you will. But we had the two McLarens pitting, only one Ferrari and only one Mercedes. And then, like I said, Kimi and Lewis stayed out. On lap 22, there was a horrible crash, a horrendous crash that involved Ollie Behrman. And he hit the barriers at Spoon. Like I said, it was lap 22. He was out of the car, thankfully, but you kind of saw him getting out of the car, and he was limping, but he was out and moving. I will give you my take on the implications of this awful crash as it relates to the new regs, and what my thoughts are on what happened. But it was a horrendous crash. It was very difficult to see that crash, and again, thankfully he is okay. And yeah, it was just very tough to see, but we're thankful that he is okay. So with that, the safety car was deployed, and George had just pitted, and he obviously was just not happy with how it all unfolded. But like, there's no way to know when a safety car is going to be deployed, and but Kimi definitely benefited from it. So then Kimi went into the pits, and obviously with a shorter pit stop during the safety car, he found himself in P1 with Lewis in P2. So he maintained the lead. Kimi maintained the lead after the restart and stayed P1 through the end of the race. But what I want to highlight in here is how he got a very commanding gap of over 13 seconds. It was a little bit more than 13 seconds ahead of Oscar Piastri, and who ended up finished second. So he took the lead, he took the lead after the safety car, but he maintained the lead after the safety car ended. And from that point on, he just went on and on and on, and building the gap between him and Oscar Piastri. So, and he did it in a very commanding way. By lap 31, Lance Stroll had to retire the car. No issue, he was able to get into the pits, so there was no problem with that. Lap 37, George Russell, I mean, with everything that happened, he was driving, seems like quite frustrated. And so he lost position to Charles while trying to overtake Lewis. So, he dropped off temporarily to 5th. And that was in around lap 37. And then around lap 42, Ferrari once again the two Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, they gave us a very exciting, once again, track battle. And, love seeing them battle. I mean, I love seeing anyone battle, but in this case particularly, because they're like so competitive and they are so, good at racing, but they're so respectful. They're fierce, but they're very respectful. So when you see their racing, side to side, is clean, is fierce, is respectful, and you gotta love that. So just very much like happened in China, they seem to have touched slightly. Thankfully, there was no issue for either one of them, and they were able to, carry on. But so Charles was able to move ahead of Lewis. So that put Charles in podium position. And then a lap later, George also was able to make a pass on Lewis, and he moved into fourth. Then around lap 51, we had a battle between Charles and George, as well as between Lewis and Lando. So they were just kind of like trying to get into that last podium position. Lewis was unable to keep up in that battle and was losing positions as they were engaging in this back and forth situation. So Lando ended up passing him on lap 52 for fifth position. That was a little bit puzzling, to be honest, because the other one who benefited from the safety car was Lewis, who didn't pit. Leclerc did, but he didn't. So it was a little bit puzzling to see how he was not able to maintain a competitive advantage when they were going through these battles between, Leclerc and George and Lando and Lewis. Pierre Gasly and Max Verstappen also had their own back and forth and battle. Well, I don't know that it was a back and forth, but it was a battle for seventh place. And Pierre Gasly drove magnificently, and he was able to keep Max behind him into P8, and Pierre finished in P7. So that Alpine seems to been working far better than it was last year, that's for sure. And but Pierre has been able to really extract a lot from that car and getting the car into the top 10 and with really great points for the team. I think it was in China where both Pierre and Franco were able to secure points, double points for Alpine. So yeah, that definitely is working well, whatever changes they have been made for Alpine. Now let's talk about Checo. And of course, I'm wearing my Cadillac shirt, tank top, whatever. So he finished 17th and ahead of Alonso. And well, it was ahead of Alonso, Valtteri, Albon, Stroll, and Ollie. And once again, he lost his mirror, and I was following his onboard, and he was telling his race engineer to kind of keep him updated because he had lost the mirror. But he was, but it is just a great accomplishment to see both Cadillac finishing the races. And it is an awesome accomplishment, and especially when you take into account that there are a lot of teams that haven't been able to have both their cars finish, or they have had or faced a lot of reliability issues. So good job, Cadillac. And this is all learning that they're going to take in, and hopefully soon they're going to and I mean, not too soon, because, these things do take time, and it's just such a new team still, just 3 races under their belt. So it's still going to take a little bit before we see some meaningful progress from the team. But just the fact alone that they're finishing the races, it is a good accomplishment. Kudos for the team. And also notably, we have to talk about Alonso and that one Aston Martin finishing the race. Given all the issues that they have had, given all the problems that they have had, it is great that at least one of them was able to finish the first race for the team. So, and of course it was with Alonso, and I said of course because we know how strong he is, and if there's someone who can extract a lot from a car that it's not working perhaps 100%, is Alonso. So good for him. So another thing about Kimi that we're also witnessing as part of this record-breaking, history-making situation is he also had the fastest lap of the race, and that makes him the youngest ever in a race to get pole, fastest lap, and the win. So he was able to complete all 3 of those as the youngest ever to do that. Now, so let's now cover the situation that occurred with Ali and that horrendous crash. This got to be a big warning, for the FIA about this speed differential in harvesting and deploying energy and the potential consequences. The sport has made great progress when it comes to safety, and safety has always been first on the agenda and paramount. And this crash, it just sets a very dangerous precedent under these 2026 regulations as it relates to safety. The drivers have talked about it and raised concerns. We had a near crash at the start. I forget which one. I think it was in Australia when Liam Lawson stalled, and Franco had to do evasive action not to crash in the back of his racing bulls. So it is. It is something that really needs to be looked after. We cannot have any issues with safety under these 2026 regulations. The FIA had put out a press release or a comment to saying that they will conduct a thorough review, they will assess, they will look at the data, and then they will determine what changes, if any, are necessary. When it comes to, I just hope it's going to be a very thorough, in-depth review, which, of course it will be. No one wants to see another accident, and, the governing body, they do want a very safe sport. So I am certain that they're going to review this thoroughly, and we will hear, I think they said that they were going to get together in April, so we will see if and what changes are gonna come out of this. So we'll see. Nobody wants to see another accident, but it is also critical, I think, for the FIA to, how can I say this? I have a lot of experience with change management, and I talked a little bit about change management. I think it was in my my last episode, episode 3. But it is very critical for any change when you have a major change and you want adoption of that change and take that adoption into ownership and beyond just adopting the change, owning it and really internalize it. You need to have a very good understanding of where all stakeholders are in this. How are they viewing the change? How are you helping them absorb the change, be aware of the change, really adopt the change, and then, make advancements and not advancements, but make progress relative to getting into ownership and commitment to the change. And so the drivers have been very vocal. Well, some of them, not all of them, but by and large, they have been vocal about these new regulations, and they have voiced concerns about some potential safety issues. So they are part of this solution, and they were specifically listed as one of the key stakeholders in this review in April. So hopefully all the stakeholders can get alignment into not only any changes, but also alignment into the change, alignment into what else they all need together as stakeholders to embrace these regulations or not, and to really adopt them and to really start speaking in a unified voice, if you will, because otherwise the implementation of the change down the road will continue to be flawed. It will continue to be flawed, and that's not what we want. If we are going to be having these regulations for a while, you need to get every stakeholder aligned and every stakeholder speaking kind of like the same language and also viewing the situation in the same way. And it's also fair to say that every change, once it gets implemented, it has its course of action, and it will just take a little bit of time for everybody to get aligned, because when there's a change, there is a feeling of what am I losing that I love from the previous regulations, and how can I move forward with the new regulations. It's even happening at the fan level. There are those who love it, there are those who think they're the worst thing that's ever happened to Formula One, and there's others that are in between. So you have to understand where all your stakeholders are, and I would say F1 fans are stakeholders too, and then help everybody navigate the change in the way they need to navigate the change. And there's always the pros and cons, there's always the yay and nay, and so we'll see what comes out of this. But we cannot have drivers concerned about another crash, or drivers let me rephrase that. We cannot have drivers really bringing up situations that are potentially going to be a safety issue. And I'm not saying that the governing body is not listening to them. I am just saying that they seem to be bringing up a lot of concerns that they need to be reviewed. And good, they're going to have that meeting in April, so they'll have an opportunity to express other concerns that they may have as it relates to safety and these regulations. So lastly, I just want to put a word on what happened with Max and this reporter from, I think the publication was The Guardian. So I just want to give you a little bit of how I view it. And, there's always going to be different points of view. I actually was seeing on social media during the weekend, since the incident with this reporter, that there was divided opinions. But all I would say here is, so, and for those of you who don't know what happened, there was like this press conference that Max was given, and this one gentleman, Richardson, I think it's his last name, Gilles Richardson, I think it's his name. So in Abu Dhabi, at the end of the championship last year, remember that Max lost the championship by 2 points to Lando Norris. So this gentleman, Richardson, asked Max if he, as he was reflecting on how he was short by 2 points, if he had regrets, so to speak, and I'm like paraphrasing, it's probably not the way it was exactly asked the question, but he was just kind of like wondering if he was looking back at what happened in Spain between him and George Russell, where, Max kind of have an incident with George and lost points there as a title decider, given that in Abu Dhabi he was short by 2 points. And so that was a question. And I guess somehow Max took offense of that question, or the way in which it was asked, or the way in which this person was, non-verbally behaving as he was asking the question. So when he saw him in this press conference, he said he was not going to answer any questions unless this person would leave. And the reporter did ask if it was because of that question back in Abu Dhabi, and he said yes. So what I'm going to say here is Max is not Max Verstappen racing. Max is Red Bull racing, but he is also, in a lot of ways, a spokesman of sorts for all the brands that sponsor him and sponsor Red Bull Racing. So I think what's at question here is this behavior from Max aligned with the values of these brands, right? Including Red Bull Racing. I read, and I don't know if this has any validity or not, and if this was indeed the case, but I read somewhere that Red Bull was not particularly pleased by Max's behavior in that press conference. And I know this is probably not the first time something similar has happened, but the variables may be different in every case. Like, in this particular case, it seemed to stem from a question that was asked then, like I said, in Abu Dhabi, but it seemed like some sort of grudge was built at that moment. And anyways, I think regardless we should not normalize this kind of behavior. And I don't know. I know it's Max Verstappen, and he is 4-time world champion, but I don't think that there has to be behaviors like that. So anyway, I just end like this again. Is this kind of behavior really representative of the values of the brands that are sponsoring Red Bull Racing and himself? So just a note there. So then next race is not until May. It will be Miami. As we all know, there's still a very sad situation happening in the Middle East, and that's why Bahrain and Saudi were canceled. So the next race is in May, and it's in Miami. So while we're not going to have a race for like 4 or 5 weeks, I think given what happened during the Japanese Grand Prix, one may expect that there's just going to be some level of news coming out of the FIA after the review in April. and so we shall see. So once there's any news or there's any information that it's worth sharing, I'll jump in here and I'll get another video going, so we can, you know, I can give you my take, or I can make you aware of what had, you know, transpired. So this is it, I think, for the Japanese Grand Prix. We have a new championship leader, the youngest ever, and he is a championship contender. Will we see a great championship fight? I hope so. And I don't know, we'll see. But thank you for joining, and please, like, you know, before, like the video, of course, if you liked it, and, you know, interact with me, give me your comments. If not through this, you know, video, I will also put in here my socials, so you can find me there, and then you can send me comments or questions too, if you'd like. And I look forward to interacting with you all, and until next time, thank you.